we're just doing a little dorking around with some automation and stuff, but I don't know, I honestly make one techno song a year nowadays, and I made one like last night, and right when we got here, frickin' Jake is like, I'm making some techno. I'm like, well, I guess me too. But let's see, I'll turn my camera back on so we can get back in the chat. And let's do a little screwing around. Let's deconstruct this thing a little bit. I think it'd be cool to, just from the chat here, simple techniques that you all have access to make the bass and drums really driving and thick like that. First of all, an essential technique for techno is that you don't want to have a backbeat. So common things that dance music producers do when they're trying to make dance music is they put in that backbeat, you know, that 2 and the 4 kind of backbeat crack, whether it's a snare drum or a clap or something. And that's too funky for techno. Techno is more of a downbeat driving energy, quarter note vibe, you know? Because if you're in that backbeat zone, now you're getting into some house and some tech house and maybe some funk territory, which I love, and frankly, maybe even more than anything, is my favorite kind of music, funk. But if you're making some techno, you got to not have that backbeat. So that just right there, all of a sudden, the structure is more lent towards a techno feel when you don't have the backbeat, and just stay heavy on the downbeat with that driving energy. And if you're making techno, I mean, not to sound cliche, but the techno drum machine, as you probably know, is the 909. Like every techno song, pretty much all through the 90s and 2000s, the drum machine really was the 909, and especially the kick drum and the hi-hats. So not the snare drum and not the toms. The toms are pretty much awful for techno, and the snare drum is not that great either, in fact. But the kick drum and the hi-hats are an essential ingredient in like driving harder, heavier techno sounding stuff. And in addition to that, another element that's absolutely essential is solid state distortion. Because if you're familiar with music made in the 70s and 80s, the way that it was loud is by overdrive. You know, whether it was in a guitar effects pedal or whether it was on a mixer just running in the reds. In the case of techno, like original techno, you had to get a Mackie mixer and you ran the trim pots into the reds on the kick drums and shit straight up. Because before computers, you wanted to make stuff sound loud. You overdrove an analog circuit, and then you get all those fat harmonics. So this is maybe a review for some of you, but if I look at my kick pad, I just go here, right here, and here's my little overdrive device. And this it's simple, but if you solo that kick drum and listen to the factory 909 without overdrive, it's like nowhere near as compelling. Like, let's just turn it off quick and listen to it by itself. Cool. I mean, that's a nice techno boom boom. But when you get this overdrive on there, it's just juicy. And look, I've only got 20% dry wet mix. Much fatter, right? And if I wanted to go harder, I'd go up to maybe 45 or 50, but I would be careful to not do more than that, because you may or may not know this about distortion in general, but especially solid state distortion, it can really take the bass out of stuff. The more you clip something hard, like even a bass guitar or something, the low end starts going away the more you hit it. So what I do is I keep that dry wet mix back more around 25 or 30, so it keeps the nice bassy kick still in there, and then I can fuck around with the drive and the tone, and in particular this filter, because with this thing wide open, the overdrive also sounds pretty gross. I mean, not too bad, but it starts to really lose its bass and shit. So you can keep that mix under 50 and then push this down low. Get into some really nice chunky bass territories, and this drive is really your saturation amount. You know what I'm saying? Now this is just like a way nice kick fattener. And then as you can see with the EQ, I pretty much on every single sound always cut the low end that's unnecessary. In this case, I'm not rolling off below 50. I'm rolling off below 29. Usually, so the lowest note on a bass guitar is like low E. It's like 34 hertz. I mean, hardly anyone can. I mean, you can hear that if you're lucky, but nothing. You can't hear anything below that. And if you're a standard mastering practice is to high pass the whole track at around 30 hertz anyway. And when it comes to getting your drums and bass to sound loud, that sub harmonic shit is just keeping everything quiet. You ever wonder, like some people, I've had millions of people ask me this question, why is it that when I bounce my songs out of Ableton, they're quiet and I can't get them to sound loud? It's one answer. You've got low end in everything. You go and you trim that unnecessary bullshit frequency content. Like, take a look here. I mean, this is my kick drum. The kick drum is peaking right now at 49 hertz. You know, that's a G. You know what I'm saying? I don't need anything below this A or B here. That's just crap, you know what I mean? And if I turn this on, you can see all that shit. Look at all that. Ooh, I can hear it too. So yeah, get rid of that shit, especially on your bass tracks, but also your microphone recordings, absolutely, because there's all that noise floor crap in there, but also on your synthesizers. You know, you got a square wave analog synth, that thing's making 20 hertz all day. You know what I mean? So you got to get in there and lop it off, and that's going to make your whole mix sound louder. So that in conjunction with some solid state distortion on all your drums, you're getting into like really heavier kind of perceived loudness feel. Because this stuff down here does not give you perceived volume. It just keeps your headroom down. You know, you want to fill that master channel volume with only good stuff, only the stuff that matters. And every decibel you give away to something that doesn't matter, you're keeping the whole band down. You know, when the band kicks, you want them to be right fully in focus, you know, so you got to get all the crowd out of the way. So cutting the bass is essential. Then another thing I almost always do is I look for a frequency or two to cut, especially when it comes to like certain frequencies that are always overloaded, you know, like back to the whole band analogy, but this is true for techno and everything else. Certain instruments can make certain frequencies all the time. Like every instrument can make 200 hertz. So every time you add a new keyboard or a new reverb or a new delay or a new anything, there's more and more of this like kind of low mid-range getting built up. So a really common thing to do when you're mixing drums is to find a frequency that other sounds are popping through at. To me, this is my pick on the top of my bass. My bass was like woo, 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 but then also doing this woo, count, 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 the little plucky shit in there. And I wanted the little pluckies to come through. And my kick drum, meanwhile, is just like frequency masking everything below 200 hertz. So I'm kind of knocking it down a little bit, and it's making a little space for that bass. Just a tiny bit. So now if I go over to the bass track, which is simply just like I said, I made this last night, so there's like no processing really on these sounds, it's basic shit. Let's take a look at my bass track. I've got it frozen right now, just in the name of the stream, but I'm going to unfreeze it. And honestly, the analog is great sounding for bass, but it also sucks for a lot of things. And I'll tell you one thing, a reason why I usually recommend people honestly learn synthesis with the analog. It's fun. And you can make some old school vintage sounds with it, like strings and stuff. But these oscillators in the analog are free running. They're not like fixed to the note trigger. So those square waves are just kind of spinning all day. And so with sub bass and shit, it's really kind of a bad instrument to choose because every time the note plays, it's going to be a little different because those oscillators are free running and always out of phase and shit with everything else. So I don't know. Somebody asked me the other day, like, what are some elements of old school, like classic house and techno? And I said the mini Moog, because it's just the basic 2 oscillator analog subtractive synth is in like every kind of music from the 80s and 90s. And so that's why I was using the analog on this. That's what inspired kind of this whole track, is making just a simple square wave bass. So I stuck with it, but as a producer tip, do that same patch, but do it with the operator or the wavetable, and it's going to be way more full and modern sounding. But here's my overdrive again, a little solid state distortion too, just again adding a little harmonics. Let's solo this by itself and listen to it. Okay, we're in a breakdown. You can hear the sidechain stop on the kick drum. I'll just do this again. Here we go. Back to the analog. So again, let's turn these effects off. I'll turn off the compressor too. We'll just go bones. And sidechain too. So those are my devices. I'm gonna hit 0 to turn them off, and here's the bass by itself. I'll kill the reverb too, so we can really hear how boring that is. It's like this bass line is proof that techno is not about notes, because there are no notes, so it's just singular, and it's just a pitch. So, but now I've got a tonal center for my song. So when I go and I make my pads, or when I go and I make my synth, you know, I can think about what note that bass is, and I can start to kind of harmonize, maybe choose some cool, weird diminished intervals or whatever, because the whole band is like one big chord, and the bass player is your thumb. You know, even if you're not going to do music theory at all and just go totally esoteric or dissonant sounding, think about that tonal center, you know, because where that bass is pumping, and then the pitch, remember, what did we say? The kick drum was a G? Man, you put that bass not at a G, but at a 5th or a 4th from the kick drum, and now all of a sudden, like, you got some more harmonic glue holding the whole vibe together. Feel me? But back to the sound design shit. Single square wave with the low pass filter with low resonance, no big deal. An essential element of this patch, though, looking at the actual patch, is that I have key tracking on. Kellen, I think you probably learned this from me back in the Ableton days at Slam Academy, but maybe you other guys did too. I don't remember. But the filter frequency just kind of sits there. But if you turn the key tracking on, and any synth has this, when you play different pitches up and down, the filter will move along with the keyboard, and that allows you to preserve your kind of tonal quality across all your different pitch ranges. So if I did end up playing a different note, God forbid, a second note, the pitch would, the filter tone would kind of wiggle along with the notes. And especially for more like a techno bass or like an acid sounding bass line, you want to fuck with that key tracking. That's a juicy little element. But then really it's not doing much beyond that. It's just a square wave. But then the magic is in the solid state distortion with the nice low pass filter. And again, at a 50-50 mix. Kellen, I think you were out of here when I mentioned that I love solid state distortion on my kind of vintage heavier sounds, bass and drums and stuff, but I'm always careful to not mix it in too hard on the dry wet mix because it takes the bass out. You lose your sub bass when you distort stuff too much. So that's why parallel distortion is awesome for this. So I take that filter and I move it down. Let's just listen to this thing in series and check out how crappy it'll sound. It's not bad, but just poke. Poke, 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 poke. I need like woo, woo, woo. You know? It's like hitting me in the forehead right now. I want it to hit me maybe down more in like the nuts. You know? And now but what happened to all my highs and shit? They're all gone. So I gotta pull the dry wet mix back. Yeah, let that little kind of tickle coming through on the top, those high frequency sounds. Another element about the overdrive I always advise is the default preset has the dynamics turned all the way up. And actually listen to how that sounds. No. For the bass, I always turn the dynamics all the way down. If you're taking notes using the overdrive effect in Ableton, this is an old school simple device, but for bass, in addition to having the dry wet mix back, keep the dynamics all the way out. Because this is introducing like cheap sounding compression to your sound, and you don't want compression right now, you just want color. Keep the dynamics bouncing, you know? So anyway, so now I got a saturation knob again with that bass, so I can make it nice and full now. So listen to the difference here. Holy shit, right? It's insane. It's one device, you know what I mean? So that's we're getting a lot of value out of that inexpensive effects pedal. It's like some Behringer shit, and it sounds great. So let's check out the EQ now. So with the EQ, I'm doing the same thing as I did before. I'm taking a close look at where my fundamental frequency is. You know, this is like kind of detuned between a B and B flat somewhere in there, but this is just garbage down here. Let's listen to it without it. Ooh, just kind of like down there. Get rid of that. I could even get rid of more. Yeah, that's even better. You don't need that low-end bullshit. And by the way, guys, for those of you who don't know, this is my opportunity to plug an incredible piece of technology that you can get for free during the outbreak. This is called SonarWorks. I know, Kellen, you and I have talked about this. I think I helped get you a license, but I hope you're enjoying it. I cannot fucking believe how good this software works. I mean, for 20 years, I've been saying, don't even use headphones if you're making music, ever. Fuck headphones, really. Because you try and get the mix right, you stay up all night in the headphones, and it sounds like horse shit in real life. But we use this SonarWorks. This is a $100 piece of software that's free right now during the outbreak. You just got to email me. I'll get you a code. And you just dial in your make and model of headphones and turn it on, and it EQs your shit for your headphones. It's awesome. And like, there's been software like this in the past, and I kind of like don't buy it. Like, I'm like, it doesn't really totally work. Headphones still suck. But honestly, this techno shit I made right now, I turned the SonarWorks off and listened to it, and it sounds terrible. And I bumped the SonarWorks back on, and it is like so good. And then when I put it out on my phone, just last night, 2 a.m, I bounced the song Techno thing out, which is just woo, 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 you know, like phone destroyer. And I put it on the phone, and it was so loud. I mean, it was like so awesomely loud, partially because I'm cutting the bass with my EQ on everything, right? That's helping me get loud. But in addition to that, the SonarWorks is helping me balance all those highs and shit. It's great. Look at all the stuff this is doing to my signal. And these are $250 headphones I have on. It's crazy. So Anyway, Sonar works. I mean, if you're doing this in headphones during the outbreak, you're doomed. So have those Sonar works, and it's free. So just email me, okay? You can just go to SonarWorks and download the Reference 4 software and run the trial, and then email me. I'll give you a code. Okay, so back to this bass track, though. Well, I'll hit pause for a sec while you guys write that down for those of you who aren't using it. Kellen, didn't you get the SonarWorks? You got that? No? You guys got to do this. It's so awesome.
Yeah. That might have been someone else. Okay. Yeah, I think I've heard you talk about that before, though. I'll definitely email you.
Cool, yeah, please do. Sorry, actually, during the outbreak, we posted on our Slam Student Lounge, and I just said, yo, if anyone wants a free copy of SonarWorks, hit me up, and I gave out about 45 copies of it. So, sorry, I was thinking you were on the list, but let me set you guys up. Just jp@slamacademy.com, just email me, and I'll get you. It's amazing stuff. And then I think what'll happen is once the outbreak is over, they'll let you buy it, but you'll get it for 50% off because you're an educational license, because you got your code from me. So it'll be $50, pretty sure, which is amazing. So yeah, that's really good stuff. So let's go back to the bass track. So now it's like pretty woofy right now. This thing's woofing pretty hard. I'm going to back off on that drive a little bit. I don't need quite that much ringing low end. It was just really ringing out. But then the other thing I'm going to do to keep it from getting too muddy is I'm going to put 2 compressors in a row on it. The first one is going to be a peak limiting compressor. And with bass, the sweet spot is somewhere between like 5-to-1 and like 7 or 8-to-1. Blurbank, I don't know if you remember learning this from like Steve Price or any of those old school engineer ninjas at Ableton, at IPR, but the sweet spot for compressing a bass is 5 to 8-to-1, somewhere around there. I usually go 5 or 6 and try it out. Here I'm on 5-ish, just getting the peaks, just kind of hitting those peaks. You got to worry about transients and stuff with a lot of instruments, but in this case with bass, I think we're just kind of pushing those peaks down a tiny bit. Noticing the big thing with bass compression is you want to make sure that the gain reduction can let go in between the notes. If the compressor is moving too slow and staying held on, like this, for instance, see how this little orange line never can go up to the top? Because the compressor's constantly holding on. And then that's bad. You don't want that. If you're going to, for bass, you want to make it, you want it to move, and you need that compressor to let go, because the bounce is where the magic happens. So I'm going to make this thing a little faster, and now you can see that orange line is poking back up to the top. Now it's really like present. Let's A/B it. Wow. Right? It's just like between the EQ and the overdrive and the compressor, this is like a bass masterclass. Click, 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 click. So now we go over to the last stage of the game, which you'd probably already know, which is the last compressor here, which is a sidechain from the kick drum. The magic of the sidechain from the kick drum is that you got to filter out the low end. That's why they give you this EQ. You probably already know this, but if you look at the way a kick drum causes a sidechain to trigger, it's just this huge fucking Snickers bar getting slammed in there because it's a big, fat, bassy kick drum. That sucks. You can put this on pre-effects for the kick drum, so then you're not getting the overdrive effect and all that. So it's just like a raw 909. That might help. See, it's got a little more of an exponential curve now, and a little less of like a, I don't know, it's less round. But better yet is just to roll the sub bass completely off of that kick drum. You can listen to it here. Oh, actually, can you guys hear this? I don't think this won't make it through the listen to plug. You can? Oh, cool. Okay, sorry. So listen to that. Now I can use this as my click. I mean, this is what I had before. And here's the post effects, which is just terrible for a sidechain trigger. Look at how round that shit is. Just round. You need it to be pokey. So let's go pre-effects and then filter it. So we're just taking the simple little kick without all the effects and shit, and then we're filtering out the sub bass. And then what I do is I crank the Q. So listen to us now here. Tick, 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 tick. That's a good sidechain trigger. Now crank the Q. So look at my pokes now. Now I got, it's like a vert ramp, dude. That's like major fucking Tony Hawk time over here. Listen to this. Yeah, so now I can pull this threshold down super low, and I can hit it just wicked hard. Now it's pumping. It's like too much sidechain. To me, by the way, for real proper old school techno, you don't want that much sidechain. A little bit. Just enough to get the kick to come through. But if you're doing like this boom, 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 it's like you're doing some bass house shit. You know what I'm saying? Some like modern sounding electronic music. You'd want to do some techno, you can't sidechain it that hard. A lot of techno people are like, no sidechain. It's like, nah, you still want a little sidechain, just not, don't overdo it like I'm doing it right now. So I'll set it up a little more techno. Here's how I would do it. Bring this threshold up. I probably want like, I don't know, anywhere from like 8 to 10 dB of gain reduction, not like 30, you know, like I had before. So I'll put it maybe on, I still want a pretty high ratio, maybe 7 or 8. I see some people really slamming that ratio. I don't know. I might slow it down a little tiny bit by increasing my release time. That's going to keep it. So this is almost like a swing feel now. If I keep this really fast, it's only ducking when the punch of the kick hits. But if I slow this down, it's staying out of the way for the boom of the kick. So I'm actually still going to pull this threshold up higher. And a popular thing to do, you'll notice I'm in this third view of the Ableton compressor. If I go to the third view, I get this little look-ahead control. And this can be really nice for sidechaining. It'll make the sidechain act even faster. So let's try that. Not getting too much of a result from that right now. You might notice that tiny little click in there. You can eliminate the click by slowing down the attack a tiny bit, but just a little bit. Don't turn that attack down too slow, because then you're going to end up with overlapping bass frequencies, and that's going to suck. So now we're in a little more techno town. You know, do 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 do. Not so much like boo bo boo bo. You know, like all over the place. So yeah, those are some cool bass management techniques. Let's check them out together now. I overdrove that kick drum pretty hard in this demo, so I'm going to go ahead and go back over to that kick drum overdrive and tame the drive on that a little bit. There we go. This thing is like, no. Just a little bit of that, all right? That's like you're on the wrong kind of drugs if you're going that hard on the overdrive. You gotta take a nap. Okay, so techno. You know, there's some bass management stuff. It's pretty fun. I don't know, I can open it up to questions if anyone has any. I've been keeping it kind of basic Ableton devices through this whole little tour.
Forgive me, but I heard a lot. I think it was part of the reverb, maybe send A, that I didn't see on the track as it was going by. What have you got as far as sends going? And a lot of the like dynamics of the track came from playing with white noise, and I just kind of want to know what's going on there.
Absolutely, man. That is like humongous. I guess one of the most essential things for techno. Like I said, you slide away from techno when you start adding instruments and backbeats and swing feels. But when you take a drum machine and add distortion and some reverb, now you're getting into techno land. And it can't just be like a regular reverb. The Ableton reverb is actually pretty good sounding when you dial it in for techno and stuff like that. It's pretty fine. But if you just throw it on a return track by itself, it won't do the trick. So here are some techniques for your time-based effects on your return tracks that are going to make your electronic, especially your dance music stuff, way more dynamic. Give you something to tell the story with other than notes. You know, it's like, okay, my instinct is to play some chords here. I'm not going to allow myself. Instead, I'm going to make the reverb dance. You know, I'm going to let the reverb be the lead singer in the band instead of the actual piano player for once. You know what I'm saying? So the way I do this, guys, and this is also an essential lesson from the James Patrick, like Ableton and sound design production classes, is I make my reverbs and my delays that are on my return tracks spectral reverbs and delays. And how I do that is I have a reverb on return A, just kind of like the default setting, but in front of it I put a bandpass filter. This allows me to have a macro that will control the tone of the overall return track. Like I can crank my sends now. Like Bill, did you notice in the end of that, when we played the track, I went and I turned up sends. I just started cranking all the sends. Like when I was recording the track, I literally was like, you know what? Let's turn up like 14 effects sends. You know, just grab a bunch of these and just fucking crank them up. like woo, you know, like if you did that normally, you would just like completely fuck your song over like terribly. But if instead you had a little bandpass filter, you can go hard on those effects sends, and then you can automate and play around with this to make the tension for tension. You know, I use this. You heard it in the track where it's like occasionally it's like, and then sometimes it's like, you know, like, and I'm just using this as a way to kind of sculpt the tone of the reverb as the signal is passing through it. So, I mean, just that alone goes a big deal.
Is your default bandpass that peaky, or do you start with it rounded, or is that kind of?
Yeah, you know what? That's an awesome, super ninja question. I think normally if I was doing non-electronic music, I would definitely keep the res more down around 30 or 40. But in this case, this is like a lead instrument in this band. I mean, like the reverb track, I'll tell you what, not only do I like the resonance pokey up to like 60% maybe to really accentuate where that thing is cruising around. You can really hear it getting brighter or darker a lot, but I'll also add a little built-in distortion. The auto filter has some vintage synthesizer distortion algorithms in here, and I put that drive on a macro too. So I can just slam the analog distortion on that bandpass filter. So now when anything goes through that reverb, it's not just like hiss. It's like, here comes a freight train, you know what I'm saying? So it's really, really effective for making a nice, thick, warm reverb, is this combination, the bandpass with a little poke and then with some drive on there. As you can see by my automation, I was not very shy with the drive on the on that track, but that's how it works. And then what I do is, honestly, when I go to the Ableton Reverb, this thing by default will have these filters turned on, so you're only, you know, it's kind of already is a spectral reverb. Turn those off, because then you'll get the most bang for your buck out of sweeping around with that pre-filter, you know. So now you've got a full signal going through depending on what's going through the filter. And then last but not least, I usually do a couple of these moves in the end. One is I sidechain it for techno, so the reverb is getting a sidechain as well. In this case, look at this is a hard sidechain. I kind of wanted the reverb, I guess, to really pump. You know, that kind of sound. I love that for techno. It's like warehouse shit. And then what I do is I take the utility effect and I turn the width up. So now it's like, you know, from behind you, extra scary and creepy reverb sound. It just enhances a sense of presence and ambience and kind of environment around the track. And so then here's the thing. And like that shit is all good and dandy. So if we're cool on those little simple steps, one other thing I think I would usually do is I'd put a little saturator maybe after the reverb. That's really fun too. Subtle bit of tape saturation on the reverb adds to its kind of vintage appeal. And again, adds those nice kind of musical harmonics around an otherwise just like espresso machine sound, you know. So get those warm it up a little bit is kind of nice. But then, so that's all good and dandy, but here's the real icing on the cake. If you run those return tracks, I mean, I would go ahead and build those into my template. Every time I open up Ableton, I have a spectral reverb, a spectral delay, and spectral distortion. So all three of them, macro 1 is the tone. So no matter what return track I'm on, I grab macro 1 and I can make it brighter or darker. But having a reverb, a delay, and some distortion, all with the filter in front, is just like, to me, for a sound playground, for coloration and creating an environment that's moving and immersive, that is the keys to the Ferrari right there, guys. So take her for a twirl.
Are we looking at the delay or the distortion?
Well, this one right now, so I'll tell you, this one is the distortion effect, return C, but I do put the echo, I put the echo effect in there because I just fucking love that echo. So awesome. Especially notice I've got it in mid-side mode. So that's that's turning the distortion and smearing it out into the stereo field. Yep. So now we get this cool, like immersive distortion, and it's not, because I've already got overdrive on the bass and kick coming right up the middle. I can't really put too much more distortion up the middle, but this mid-side decoder is going to push this digital distortion and stuff out to the side bands more. And then there I am with the saturator warming it up again. So there's a lot of warmth and presence and imaging happening all in tandem on those three return tracks. And it's all sculpted by that like initial bandpass filter. That is good stuff. This is a cool little kind of intermediate to advanced level hangout, which I'm sure enjoying. Thank you guys for the good questions. Every once in a while I get caught up explaining to people like what a clip is, and that's okay too, but this is much more fun. So in fact, to move it on from the kind of intermediate level into the advanced, here's what all of this boils down to. You know when we were listening to my track, and I would be like, oh cool, look at this track. This little maroon guy right here, hold on. This dude. And then what about I got a whole pile of them here. These guys, they're essential to the track, right? Those are like the big noise lead sounds that are like, they're in the front of the stage. That's the guitar solo, all that stuff. I don't run I run the return tracks live, yes. And I do like automate the aux sends for different effect changes over time. That's groovy. But another thing I do, you guys, check this technique. I got 8 minutes to show you one of the dopest techniques of all electronic music history. Are you ready? This is magical. I'm going to go back over to my session view, and I'm going to grab an audio track that I'm not using for anything. If I was really being smart, I'd add a new audio track. And I'd go to the I/O section for the track, and I'd take audio from Resampling. This is going to record the master output. Right? Then I'm going to go like I did before over to my effects. I'm going to take everything except for maybe the drums. I'm going to shift click on all these tracks, just like everything. Except for the one I'm recording on. And I'm going to go ahead and just fucking slam them. So now I'm sending like the whole band through the return tracks, return A. And now, in fact, instead of recording from resampling, I'm going to be smart and I'm just going to record from return A. Now I'm going to hit record on that track and I'm just going to launch some shit. Now I'm going to go play with this effect track. Haven't you guys ever wanted a cool transition sound or a cool riser or white noise sound? Or maybe a cool abstract tension sound that's going to be perfectly in key with everything in your song already and already fit the musical like ensemble you've created? I hit tab now and I bring this over to my arrangement view. I drop it in there. And now I start going to town on the chop shop. You know what I'm saying? I got all my tracks right here. I can see the whole song, but I got this guy. And I can be like, let's put it over here. And I think this beginning part would be a sick intro. So I'm going to wait for this thing to move over. And now watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to put a little fade on it. Oh, yeah. Look, now I'm going to turn this whole original guy off. 0. Let's try it out. Oh, yeah, from the beginning over here. Sorry. Yeah, dude. You know what I mean? And now let's grab another chunk. Now watch this workflow, guys. I can just highlight it. I can option drag it into wherever I want a new sound. I think I need one right here. I don't know, just a sound would be cool there. So I'm going to hit 0. And now watch what I can do, guys. Z blows it up. And now if I hold Shift and Option, I can choose different parts of the recording inside of that section. You guys see this ninja shit? Shift Option. Let's put this wherever we want it. I'm going to go here, and you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to crop this one by right-clicking on it and hitting crop. And then I'm going to reverse it with the letter R. Right? I can fold that thing back up. I can slide it wherever I want it. Let's listen to it from here. Yeah, dude. There's like jougy, 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 just like a reverse side chain, like shaker sound coming in. That's like, let's listen to it by itself. That is some techno shit right there. You know, this is like using those return tracks as like a member in your band is awesome, but then using them as like a sound design source is really awesome. Because now I can just have a little heyday playing around with my return tracks and recording shit, and all of a sudden I'm going to run into this sea of sound ideas, you know, and these are all little whips. Look, watch, option drag. I want a sound there, fade it in, fade it out. Z, let's listen to this thing. Oh my God. Like if you were scoring a film, you're like Hans fucking Zimmer now. All right? Send me a check, you guys. What's up? I'm just saying these are great techniques, right? This is dope shit. So now look, I can just use my arrows and put this wherever I want. Look at this transition sound. You know, I mean, and it's way more controlled now because it's audio. It's not just this loose, free running thing. Like for mixing shit, I hate having dynamic processing. I like baking everything to audio because then you can really get in and erase things and snip them out of there and make it really punchy and not have all these loose, free running reverbs and MIDI tracks playing notes and shit that you can't see. So yeah, I feel like there's a high level of edge and detail you can pay to your songs when you're working with audio on this level, and when it's sounds that you made with your own parts originally, it always fits, you know. It's like always working, and it gives you another reason to play around with that spectral reverb and delay while you're recording it, you know, because now you're making other sounds to keep the song more interesting. So yeah, there's some sage bit of advice from your old Uncle Raver JP buds. What's up?
Sorry for my shitty microphone. Do you ever run into phase issues?
Well, yeah, so that's a good point. So one thing that'll happen is, you know, I wouldn't say I run into phase issues, but what happens is that the message becomes less and less clear the more of these things you have layered on top of each other. So oftentimes, you guys, what I'll do is I will make audio stems of my return tracks. So when I get to this point where the song is basically done, I'll just do a resampling. Like I'll bounce a stem out of all my just my returns. A really cool way to do that, if you want to make a stem, just let's watch quick. I'm going to hit Command L or I'm going to loop my whole song, and I'm just going to solo. This is the old school stem creation workflow where you just go to the mixer and solo the tracks, and then you bounce to disk. And this is just going to give you just the return tracks as an audio. So I'm just going to go ahead and do this. I'm not going to normalize it. I don't need an MP3, and I definitely don't want to dither this. I'm just bouncing out a big old WAV file. And I'm going to hit export and put it right into my project folder. Techno ? Sure. Let's call this effects returns stem. So it's all the effects baked into one stem. And maybe it would be cool for me to do individual stems of each of them if I was really being meticulous, but I'm not. And I'd make a new folder here and call this stems inside of the project folder so I can just load this up with stems. Because finishing a track involves flipping things to audio, and son of a bitch, I left pardon my language, I need to quickly turn off SonarWorks, because this is the thing, when you're using the SonarWorks, you can't have it on when you're bouncing to disk, or it will apply your headphone EQ to the stems, which would be a major fail. So don't do that. So you got to remember, they didn't used to put that warning up, and I was everyone in the world was like, this is sweet, making stems, and not realizing that sounds shitty to everyone else. Oops. So let's go ahead and do that right. We turn that thing off, and now we're kicking out a stem, which of course we're going to drag back in, and then we're going to mute our return tracks. So Jake, back to your question. Do I ever run into phase issues? I mean, I would call it phase issues if these were like vocals or guitars or pianos. But when I'm dealing with like alien sounds, I don't really say like, oh, it's phasing to me because I can't really tell. But what I can tell is that, oh, I'm losing the message here. It's becoming just like it's becoming brown. Because you mix too many colors, you know what happens. So yeah, God, it was 1:52, and we were like, let's push this and record some return tracks and then use those samples as transition sounds. See if we can do it in 8 minutes. We did that. Plus now we're baking our returns for the mix and we're going to drop them back in. So this has been a really cool production gauntlet we've gone through, and I appreciate your guys' really good questions. I'm not done until this thing gets drugged back in, so let's hang out. What's up?
This is exactly the kind of a technique I needed in my life right now.
Awesome. I feel that way too. I tell you, looking at a MIDI keyboard and a virtual instrument is a far cry from a piece of music that feels produced. MIDI and keyboards is for songwriters, and audio tracks and the eraser tool and the stretch tool are for producers. And like, so I kind of feel like, I mean, dude, to think about it, I started making beats in like, I don't know, 1998, and I didn't really figure out how to make something that sounded awesome until like 2008 or 10. And it was because I was just thinking MIDI keyboards and notes all the time. I'll just load up a cool VST, grab a preset, make a sequence. Cool, this is my music? No, that's the demo. When Michael Jackson made Thriller, he made it all himself with just like some presets on a drum machine. And then he went over to Quincy Jones's place and was like, Quincy, is this any good? And Quincy was like, holy shit. And let's delete all those bullshit instruments and have a real band come in. And that's what you did in the 80s, But now what you do is you take those instrument ideas and you flip them to audio, and then you start working with the audio files. And then I think that's how you can make something that's really psychedelic and also really, really loud and clear. Like also another cool thing I was going to say is, the strongest gesture you can make as a musician or songwriter is silence. And it's like really hard to do silence with MIDI instruments. You let go of the keyboard and it's like or whatever is going on your stupid preset. But if you do all that, that's cool. But then you cook it to audio, then you can be like, wait, at this quarter note, it's a full fucking rest. We all love that in electronic music when all of a sudden everything stops. Or when there's complete silence and it's not just like a reverb tail, but it's like, oh my God, for an eighth note, I heard complete silence there. That is exciting as fuck. And you cannot get that handled with live return tracks and reverbs and MIDI instruments tailing off and shit. You got to flip them. So anyway, let's finish that workflow for good measure. I'm going to go to the bottom of my arrangement view and make a new track. And I'm going to call this effects returns, which now in Live 10, I wouldn't have even need to rename that because it named my stem. And when I drop the stem onto the track, it'll name it for me. But I guess I just did that out of habit. And now I have to remember where the fudge I put this project. I guess this is a 2020 hit. This is my Techno folder. Here's my stems. And I've got my effects return stem, which I'll drop in. And the really awesome advice I can tell you now is just don't warp it at all. Whenever possible, keep warp mode off. You're going to get, especially with your drum sounds, don't warp your drums. You got drum sounds, keep warp mode off if they're on the track, or if you've got, this is a lot of the reason why people like using samplers and drum racks, because you're not warping the sound ever, so you're just getting the full clarity of the individual drum hits. So even with these effects returns, look at this, here's my swoosh. That was all my only return track I ended up using. Oh, you know what I did? I fucked up, you guys. Pop quiz, what did I do wrong? Why is there only one little swoosh on my whole return track stem? It's a tricky little scenario.
Because it's because you didn't export individual tracks, so it did all three at once, right?
No, in fact, if I did since I did all three at once, this file should be extra full of crap because it's got the delay. Yeah. So why is there only one thing in there? And the answer is on the screen. This is dun 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 dun. The winner gets an Ableton hoodie. No, just kidding. But what do you think? So, Bill, it's a pop quiz. I just bounced out an effect return stem to make some stems, and I had all three return tracks totally active, but I only got this one little swoosh. What did I do wrong? Phrase your answer in the form of a question. This is Ableton Technical for $400. Points, I mean, not dollars. What do you?
What is you had one of your tracks soloed?
No, but great guess. But okay, that's got it. Now you owe Jeopardy 400 big ones. No, this is a tricky one. Whenever you're going to bounce stems out or record, resample anything, you got to make sure you've re-enabled automation. That's that little orange arrow up top. Remember I was dicking around with all my sends earlier, like playing with them, having fun? I turned them all down. So when I bounced out my stems, all my automation was broken and there was no return, no sends turned up. So boopity boop. That happened. So I would redo that right now, but I'm not going to. But you guys get the idea. But look, this could be a sweet swoosh though. Let's listen to it. You know, that's cool. But I think for now, I'm just going to ditch it and let the effects run live, and I'll make a new stem later. But there's some workflows. We've got a whole bunch of them packed into a kind of small amount of time. And I'm your host, James Patrick. Tell your friends, please, about Slam Academy. The big reason why we're doing this is because we want to just meet people and hang out during isolation. Instead of trying to sell programs and shit, we're just like, look, nobody even knows if there's going to be on planet Earth in a couple of weeks, so let's just hang out while we can and be together. So I'm here every Friday at 1 p.m., and you're all invited. But like I said, please invite your friends, and please tell people about Slam Academy, because we do want to continue to extend our network during this unfortunate but sometimes fun time.
One question for you. That's the sound design course that starts in July, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep. July 7th. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You're teaching that, right? Obviously.
Yes, I am.
And I take it that's online, right?
Yep. So like, that is
like we're gonna do it like this kind of stuff.
Yep. It's this style. Yep, it's this style. And just so you get a feel for what our online classes at Slam Academy are like is, first of all, yes, they'll have to pry the sound design course out of my cold, dead hands because it's like my favorite class to teach. But it meets for 3 hours a week. But then in addition, you have 2 lab hours a week. So you can have up to 5 hours a week of contact time. And every week has a project that you just get to work on your own. But the projects are all based on essential techniques of the sound designer, and it walks all the way through all the things you need to know. By the end of like level 4, which is about halfway through, you're making libraries of original sound works, like sound libraries of your original sounds, as well as composing and arranging original music that's made entirely out of your own sounds. And also by applying those sounds to visual media. So a lot of popular applications of the sound design stuff now is whether you're making commercial works with visual media, visual assets, like I just got done scoring a film and I just got paid $700. It took me a half of a day. And it was because I just made some pads and shit and like slid some audio files around, fixed up this camera audio for this person making a little Instagram movie or whatever. And it's like sound design, the sound art form is vast, but we cover all the bases and it's really, really exciting. And it's concise too. This is the sound design course that I adopted from when I taught at IPR for 10 years back when Bill Urbank and I met. And I was handed this course by an old school sound designer named Steve Horner. I don't know if Urbank, you ever met Steve Horner, but he was a great dude. And to him, sound design was like learning how to use a Moog synthesizer. And I was like, okay, that's cool, but I need to do Reactor and Max MSP and Ableton. And so we started tying in all this advanced shit, which is really, really cool. And now really that sound design course is a culmination of about 20 years of me collecting the very best workflows and tips to help you know how to make your own original music all the time. And it is totally dope. And I was going to say too, Jake, did you take an Ableton class at Slam in the past?
So I was going to say that I actually did the crash course one-on-one JP extraordinaire back in the day when you used to do that. Mm-hmm. I think it was in your kind of transition when IPR closed and you were still trying to figure out if you were going to it seemed like you were just doing individual.
Sure, I still do those. I call them like mentorships, where it's like one-on-one. I meet you every week. I still do those. I have quite a few students.
It was like a crash course, so I remember it just being like so much information to kind of get a grasp on. But when, like you said earlier, how it took you 10 years to kind of get to the point where you're actually happy with the music you made, I've probably been I think I did that probably 7 years ago with you, and I think the last 2 songs I've been working on, I'm like, these are fucking slammers. Like,
awesome, dude.
Like fucking warehouse bangers, you know.
Super cool.
Like, well, like,
thank you.
It's weird because you get it's all because of you too, you know. But but it's also mostly, you know, me actually just you got to take the time, you know. You got to actually like, because there's so many ins and outs of it that takes so much time to finally find figure out the route that you actually want to go to.
No doubt. That's the whole thing. Like, once you figure out the tools, then it's like, okay, what is your message? I mean, that to me at this point, for the past 10 years, for me, that's been the challenge. Because like, I put out all this techno, and I like techno, but I also clearly love other kinds of music. So trying to figure out, how do I distill all these different loves of sound into a single, or maybe a couple different isolated streams that people can latch onto. And so that's a whole other can of worms that's tricky. On that note, I don't know if you guys know who Megan Hamilton is, but she is a local superstar, and she's one of the coolest, nicest, and most inspiring people I've ever met. And she teaches our music industry course right now, and is also our director of marketing. And she is taking a dozen people right now from, I know how to make cool sounding beats, to I'm on a label and going on tour and have tons of followers on my social media, and it's all scheduled and easy. And she's like doing a great job helping people figure that stuff out. So that's just another plug quick. But I want you in sound design. And we could figure out, oh yeah, you know what I forgot to say is that all of our classes are 20% off right now. I was like, how can I get Jake a discount? But everyone gets 20% off. So you sign up. I don't need it. I don't need this. It's been something I've wanted to do for a while. And, you know, in the middle of this whole disaster that's going on, I have more than enough time on my hands to, learn more. And it's the biggest reason why I was able to, you know, make stuff happen with, or more recently, you know, is because I've just, over the last 2 months, I've just been like, spent 8 hours a day in front of my computer trying to figure this shit out. And it's finally kind of starting to click, you know. Yay. That is so wonderful to hear, Jake. I remember you were just always so inspired, but I could tell that you were kind of earlier on the learning curve. So hearing that you're happy with your music right now is just really, really awesome. Like, I can honestly say that I realized many, many, many years ago that people who are needing a life-changing experience aren't looking to be sold that experience. What they're waiting for is the right person in their life to come along and be like, hey, my life was changed, and I think you're ready for this. Like someone that they love, one of their best friends, you know what I mean? Because those are the people that really excel at slam and at doing this, because you didn't just, I'm reading the back of City Pages and looking for the right advertisement that's going to change my life. Like, come on. No, it's more like you see where all the resources are and you're just waiting for maybe something to be the right thing. But it takes like someone you love or like a best friend to be like, yo, this changed my life. And you see how it's changed my life. You should do it too. And so because of that, if you guys could do me a favor, and I know you maybe are already doing this, spread the word to your buddies and tell them that this is truly life-changing, especially the ones that are ready for it. You know what I mean? And Jake, that's you, dude. I mean, let's get you in that sound design class. That would be awesome. Yeah, if you like some of the stuff we did today, it's like 6 months of nothing but that, which is really, really fun. So please, and Kellen, I know you didn't do sound design yet with me, did you?
No, gosh, it's on my to-do list. I really, really want to do it. I just haven't had the right time yet.
Well, check it out. If it's because you've been too busy at bars and restaurants, or maybe traveling,
exactly.
You're done on the excuses, homie.
My band is done right now, so I've got lots of free time.
Mine too. Damn it. Okay, well, I think I've plugged it enough. But of course, you know, Kellen, how much I admire you and love working with you too, and same with you, Bill. All three of you guys. Any chance I can have to work with you again, if nothing else, just please come through again on these Friday sessions, and we'll keep hanging.
Wait, real quick, what's the class to take for the guy who took your classes 9 years ago and forgotten more than he remembered?
Ableton, the Ableton producer program.
Sure,
yep.
okay.
And it's awesome. That one starts in June. So next month.
Sounds like might be a birthday present for myself. All right.
Oh my God, you guys. Oh,
I got to get to another meeting here. JP,
yeah, I do too. I got a 2:15 right now. That was really wonderful. I'm hanging up too. Great, guys. That's wonderful hanging with you. I'll be talking to you soon. All right. Thanks.
Whoa! can see you guys there. My name's Joe Woodling, and I'm from Slam Academy. And today I want to show you guys how you can make sick beats like this by taking our Ableton Live course, which starts on June 1st. Let's hop in! Scuba-dee-boo-doo! Scuba-dee-boo-doo! Thanks for tuning in, guys. I'm going to hand this beat off now to our instructor for the bass music masterclass.